The old FBI, the three-piece suit and the snap-brim hat, the FBI of J. Edgar Hoover and countless movies and television episodes is gone. The new FBI can be a man dressed as an Arab sheikh, a hippie, or someone high up in organized crime. That's because more and more the FBI is going undercover. The Bureau has achieved a string of successes by going undercover. It's pulled in dishonest politicians, businessmen, and professional criminals. But there's one aspect of undercover that has not received much attention. The men, the agents who live on the other side of the law. What happens to a true blue FBI agent after a long stretch of living a double life? Livingston. He was an FBI agent and had been with the Bureau for 17 years. 5 of those years undercover. The last 2.5 playing the role of Pat Salamone, a flashy Detroit mobster. His mission was to infiltrate the pornography industry in an attempt by the FBI to show that it was controlled by organized crime. Because it started in Miami, the investigation was given the code name My Porn, but it reached out across the country. As Salamone, Pat Livingston was undercover longer than just about anyone ever has been in FBI history. Undercover work requires more than mere competence as a law officer. It requires an agent to immerse himself in the role of criminal. Pat Livingston, living and working in the seamiest side of American life, was an excellent cop and an excellent actor. The risks were more than just a bad review. So it's not surprising that he wants to keep his face obscured even today.
You weren't allowed, that one mistake. There had been, threats made against my life during the operation, but you just had to suppress, those problems. You had to work at being the person you were portraying. If you were a criminal operating in a criminal environment, you had to act like the criminal. You had to adopt the lifestyle, the demeanor, the character of that person. You learned real quick that you needed, flashy clothes, the right amount of jewelry, a high-rolling lifestyle, and that's what you worked hard at.
Big spender.
Sure. The only reason that anybody wanted to deal with Salamone is because he had money to spend.
The FBI bankrolled the play that Pat Livingston and his partner were starring in from coast to coast. It cost $400,000. The money went on all sorts of things.
Women?
Sure, women constantly. You're talking about the pornography area. There were times when women were offered to us.
Being Pat Salamone meant living a mobster's idea of the good life. Up all hours, hanging out where the action was, where introductions could be made to the right people. It took time and patience and steady nerves. One of Salamone's favorite haunts was a restaurant called Mr. Laughs. Its owner has a saloon keeper's view of the world. What people do outside the premises is none of his business. He's Clint Ramsden. He remembers Pat Salamone.
What did you think Pat did for a living?
Obviously, the first thought that came to my mind was drugs. South Florida at the time was flourishing in drug traffic. Pat was coming in with a lot of gold on, playing the part of a big-time type mover. It's really hard to put a finger on those types, and those of us in the business, sometimes after you just a couple surface-type questions, you really don't go any deeper.
Why not?
I guess it's through years of experience that maybe you really don't want to know.
The front for the undercover operation was called Gold Coast Specialties. Note the cutesy spelling. It was meant to appear as a hoodlum's idea of class. And the front for the front, so to speak, was trafficking in designer blue jeans. Behind that was the pornography operation. And behind that was an FBI camera that recorded Salamone's operation.
When we started this thing, you said you'll take everything.
No, I didn't.
You did. Well, what do we need? Why do we give you this?
We wanted, some decent stuff.
Ruby Gottesman, on the right, was convicted of racketeering, selling pirated films. Once Salamone's credentials as a legitimate hoodlum were established, he was offered more than dirty pictures. One day, a criminal named Roberto Chamizo walked in and offered to sell Gold Coast 50 submachine guns with silencers, the kind that the Miami cocaine cowboys were using, all for a mere $150,000.
Are you impressed?
Holy, looks like a cannon.
Are you impressed? This is an Ingram, an M10.
The FBI wanted the guns off the street without losing the $150,000, and they did not want to risk the undercover operation. Salamone set up the deal in a parking lot near the Miami airport.
So, in effect, you had to steal the machine guns
That's exactly what we had
and
to do.
steal your money back.
Exactly. An impossible situation.
Without blowing your cover.
Without blowing your cover. We were going to exchange keys, them driving away in our car with the cash, myself driving away with the guns in the truck that they had provided. So, as this was going down, the Dade County police car showed up. The bottom line is that they were agents, and they took the van and the guns and the money and made it appear that it was a rip-off by the cops.
And this was really an aside to the real world.
Every day there was a deal that came up.
But this gun deal was too good to resist, too important to resist.
Well, it's too important. The gun you take off the street, could be the one that would get you.
Chamizo was arrested, pleaded guilty, and is now doing time in prison.
As time went on and more you were being Pat Salamone. Were you starting to enjoy that?
Well, there are a lot of, exciting things about being Salamone.
How did Pat Livingston regard Pat Salamone?
Salamone's 2.5 years undercover. Operation My Porn was over.
But that wasn't the end of Pat Salamone.
Salamone rocked along.
Why?
I don't know. Didn't go back to the three-piece suits. I didn't shave. I kept the same look and, to some extent, the same lifestyle after that.
Even the obvious dangers in continuing to live the Salamone life did not deter him. He was on a high, like an actor who cannot give up a role. Even on the day he received his 16th commendation from his 4th FBI director, William Webster, Livingston was still wearing the Salamone personality. It was all beginning to worry his friends.
After the operation ended, he continued to behave the same way he did when he was an undercover agent. And of course, he wasn't an undercover agent anymore.
Bill Brown is a Miami attorney, Pat Livingston's oldest, closest friend. Brown was the lawyer the FBI asked to draw up the papers that set up Gold Coast Specialties in business.
I'm not a psychiatrist, but anybody that's reasonably alert would understand that a person that prefers to be known by another name than his own prefers to act as a small-time hoodlum, that there's something wrong there. He never came back to being the way he was before.
Did you have words with him about this?
Yes, we talked about it quite often.
What did you tell him when he said, Pat, I'm worried about you?
Well, I resisted that. I just wouldn't accept the fact that there had been any problems that carried over from the undercover activity.
Pat was a very, very dedicated agent, both as a trainee and in the field. A hard-working guy, had a great interest in the Bureau and a great interest in law enforcement.
Art Nearboss was the FBI agent in charge of Miami during the My Porn investigation. He's retired since, now runs the Organized Crime Bureau for the Dade County Police. He was concerned about Livingston being unable to shake the case once My Porn had ended.
He seemed to be obsessed by the case. He had a great compulsion that the case excel. Perhaps just a shade more than a dedicated, hard-working agent ought to have. And it was this almost total dedication to the case, compulsion to excel, that we felt needed psychiatric evaluation.
And what did the psychiatrist say?
The psychiatrist found him normal. He found no abnormalities, no personality disorders.
Pat was due for a transfer after My Porn, and he was duly transferred here to the Louisville, Kentucky office of the FBI. But back in Miami, Art Nearboss was still concerned about him.
My recollection is that we suggested to the Louisville office that he not be used in an undercover capacity for a period of time.
The first hour in the office, I was assigned to another undercover operation. And the first 2 weeks in Louisville, that's exactly what I did. I had a wife and 2 kids sitting in a hotel room, and I was interested in getting into a home and getting settled there.
What'd your wife say to you?
She was upset. We had separated for, 2.5 years during the operation, and she's sitting beside me in the car crying as we're going to pick up the rent-a-car. I guess she saw it starting over again. I didn't. It was just another assignment, another role with Salamone.
I couldn't believe it. Everyone connected with the operation in Miami, supervisors, friends and acquaintances, had all said that Pat should not do any more undercover work. It was hurting him.
Not only did the FBI send him out again here in Louisville as Pat Salamone, but it sent him on special assignment to Seattle and other cities, all under his old cover of Pat Salamone.
You yourself, did you feel that this Pat Salamone was kind of invincible?
I think at the time, I was as comfortable, being Salamone as I was Livingston.
Back in Louisville, he was due to go out yet again as Pat Salamone. The day before he was to resume that identity, he dropped into this department store, Bacon's, to do some shopping. He bought $3 worth of weather stripping for his new house, and then he went into the men's department and browsed through the racks. As he was about to leave the store, he was stopped by the store detective for shoplifting. And sure enough, stuffed into his shopping bag was $150 worth of merchandise he hadn't paid for.
I asked, who I was. I said I was Salamone.
Did you try to talk your way out of it?
Well, I argued with the people that, this is a mistake, what's going on here, and, gave the normal Salamone song and dance to see what would happen.
What did happen was the police were called in and he was hauled off to the local jail. He made his phone call. He called the FBI and told them it was all a misunderstanding. After the FBI made its own investigation, he changed that story and then gave them another version and finally admitted he was guilty of shoplifting. He was fired from the FBI. But was Pat Livingston really guilty, or was the real criminal Pat Salamone?
Why'd you do it?
I don't know.
Why did Salamone do it?
I don't know. That's, that is a question that I've asked myself many times over.
Had a Livingston ever stolen anything?
No. Livingston was had spent 17 years with the FBI and was proud of it, and that's what his career was about.
During the course of my porn, we had a very, very strict audit, as we do in all undercover operations, and there was never a hint or a suggestion that any of the funds entrusted to Pat or his partner were ever misused. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can only explain this petty shoplifting in the classical psychiatric terms of a cry for help.
The whole episode was so irrational, the way he handled it, bordered on stupidity at best.
Dr. Carlton Riddick is a Louisville psychologist who's been treating Pat ever since the shoplifting incident. Livingston gave him permission to talk about the case.
Do you see a direct relationship between what happened in that department store and the 2.5 years of undercover work?
Almost a direct correlation to my mind.
But why would a savvy agent and an equally savvy criminal he is portraying pull such a petty, even stupid stunt?
The role had become too much. He was not only undercover 2.5 years, he was in essence undercover 5 years, day after day. It was time to get out. It was time to go back to basic Midwestern Ohio solid cop. He chose a strategy which he could not possibly win. He chose a strategy that, in essence, had to blow the undercover role. It had to take him out of it.
Using a sports metaphor, he decided to throw the game.
Yeah, he went in the tank.
What about the FBI's responsibility in this, or obligation to him?
The FBI has taken the attitude that his work undercover has nothing to do with his subsequent problems, so they simply fired him. Pat was injured in the battle, and his injury embarrassed them, so they shoot him.
I really think that's unfair. We didn't shoot our own wounded here.
Roger Young, the assistant director of the FBI for Public Affairs, says the Bureau anguished over the Livingston case, but fired him nevertheless.
In Pat Livingston's case, I would never tell you that he wasn't a good agent and that he didn't serve the Bureau well. He served with distinction. However, there was a problem, and his credibility literally was destroyed.
Shortly after Pat was fired, after his troubles and he was fired, another FBI agent, just out from undercover, arrested in California for shoplifting. Mm-hmm. You didn't fire him.
Distinct differences, though, in the case. In that particular instance, the agent came forward, acknowledged what the problems were, and of course, as you know, in Pat Livingston's case, one of the reasons that he was fired was lack of candor. In other words, deception.
Well, lack of candor can be a symptom of a disease, too.
It can be. It certainly can be.
If you look at your own study, the special agent in undercover operation, confidential study by the FBI, everything in here points to a Pat Livingston. Marital problems, severe stress associated with return to normal duty, role reversal, taking on the values of the criminal. This is your own study, produced, what, weeks after he came off my porn. So your own study is pointing to what's going to happen to this guy. It's a beacon.
Well, these are beacons. They are guides. Our findings in the Livingston case, however, indicated that it was not because of the undercover activity that he fell into these problems.
Mr. Young says it was a very tough call by the FBI, but in the end, for the sake of the Bureau, the call was out.
You know, everyone indicates or acknowledges there was a problem. But the question was the problem caused by his stressful assignment, which I think we would agree we all have, or was it a matter of a weakness on his part, which from that point forward so destroyed his credibility that he could no longer serve as an FBI agent?
I feel betrayed. I feel that I took on a difficult job, did it well, made a mistake, and I'm out in the cold.
Recently, a federal judge ruled that the testimony Livingston gave to a grand jury in the My Porn cases was tainted because of the shoplifting incident, and has thrown out those My Porn cases that have not yet come to trial. In all, Pat Livingston saw 5 psychologists and psychiatrists after the shoplifting incident. 4 of the 5 say there was a direct connection between the theft and his undercover work. Only the last doctor, the one he was sent to by the FBI, suggested there may be no connection. But even he said Livingston was under great stress and that the theft might be seen as a cry for help.